Good afternoon YouTube and welcome back to the channel. And finally we are finishing the brake cooling on my 2011 e92 M3. So in the previous video we fitted the Carbon Factory full one-piece GT4 style splitter and we left just the ducts open for the brake cooling. So it's a monstrous thing. I have caught it on a few curbs. We've installed some little strips underneath to try and help with saving the splitter. I'll be honest, it's probably not great for UK roads. But in today's video, we're going to modify the brake shields, put some sort of homemade ducting in place and get the brake cooling working. So in theory, it will be ready for a Nürburgring trip. So stay with us, and I do apologise for all the background and wind noise, so hopefully you can hear everything.
I had originally set out with a homemade bracket design that I thought up in my head. Unfortunately, it just wasn't what I hoped, and as you'll see here, it was getting pretty messy.
I'm going to be honest, it's not going well. The ducting I think is too big, probably should have gone 50mm, and it's making a right mess trying to chop up the heat shield. Thankfully nothing expensive, so I'm going to actually have to buy some brackets, because I think it's just going to be a much neater job rather than it's ending up like a massive bodge. I had visions of it going much better than it did, but unfortunately that is just the way it goes sometimes. So I'm not sure how many months it's going to be before we revisit this, but I'm going to order the brackets, order new ducting, and try and motivate myself to get the car back up. So next time it's probably not going to be lovely and sunny, it's probably going to be rainy and grey in the UK.
I lost interest in the brake cooling over winter, but with a headlight ballast letting me down, it was time to kick it off again.
So welcome back to the channel, and advised in the last clip it was going to be a few months before I got round to this. So what's happened since the last video? Well, I ended up just buying some lightweight alley brake adapters off of AliExpress. I don't really know what to expect quality wise over the years, but for £30–35, whatever they came to, they've got a slightly smaller diameter, and we've had to buy some smaller piping, which should hopefully make it easier to run through the arch liner, because that 70mm stuff did not look like it was going to fit. So these come in at 50mm, pipe works 51, so it goes over the outside of the ducting that's going to go where the dust shield is. But the ducts on the front bumper, the GT4 splitter, are 60mm. So I've just sort of opened it up here, cut the wire out, and I'm hoping I'll just be able to slide that over the top, cable tie in place and tape it up, and that will hold, fingers crossed.
As the headlights were out, as mentioned earlier, it was time to get this ducting attached, and as mentioned, it was actually around 60mm for the GT4 duct. So what you could use was a 60 to 50mm reducer, but you haven't got a lot of space in there. It's not a perfect angle, so essentially it's just split open, cable tied, electric tape. Unfortunately, 500mm per side was not long enough. You really need about 800mm. So if you are doing this conversion, just order 2 meters and cut back what you don't need. Otherwise you're going to have to do what I do, where I'm now joining it. I've covered this plenty of times on the M-Car videos, but I think it's good to include it in the guides. Let me know in the comments if you like seeing it. But essentially, the best way to jack the M3 up, especially when you've got a GT4 splitter on there and a low car, is to jack from one of the side jacking points onto a block of wood, drop it back down, and then you can get the trolley jack underneath for the central jacking point, which then allows you to bone both sides up into the air. Now, ultimately, you could do it one side per time, but it's always nice to have it at working height. With the wheel removed, you now get access to begin work on the brake cooling, and essentially we're going to need to remove the arch liner. It is tight in there, there's not a lot of room, but there is enough just to get that 50mm pipe work through. So using an 8 and a 10mm socket, you can slowly work around and remove the screws and nuts that are holding the arch liner in place. It's quite self-explanatory, but unfortunately not a great camera angle to be able to see all the fixings that I'm removing. With the wheel spacer removed, it's now time to remove the brake caliper. Putting the steering on full right lock allows access to get to the 18mm bolts located on the top and bottom of the brake caliper. Carefully remove these and then using a cable tie support the caliper on the subframe. You don't want to leave that caliper hanging on your brake hose because there's a good chance you're going to damage it. With the caliper safely out of the way, you can now centralise the steering wheel and begin removing the discs. This is held on with two 6mm retaining screws. Once removed, you'll then be able to access the standard dust shield. And as you can see from where I chopped mine out previously and didn't treat it, it was looking a state and ready for the bin. So with a 10mm socket, you can now undo the dust shield that uses 3 mounting points on the hub. With the standard dust shield now out of the way, you can refit the new one. As you'll probably see, it only uses 2 of the original 3 mounting points for the new brake cooling version. With these, you use the original mounting bolts, and again, it's only pinch tight. You don't need to go crazy with these when locking them up. The next step is fitting the new 51mm ducting to the back of the dust shield. As you can see here, I've obviously got 2 pipes where I've made the mistake and ordered it too short. What I could have done was just order a brand new length and then fitted one piece all the way through. The problem I had was it's going to be bumper removal, and I thought for the sake of what these joiners cost me for £1, I'm just going to fit these, and we'll test later on if this has caused any issues with airflow. Every time I work on the cars at the moment, just rains, sunshine, rain. Placing around 6 cable ties along the arm, you can see it holds the ducting back in place. Now you do need to keep in mind that obviously the steering wheel is going to rotate left and right, and you're going to have enough allowance for that in the ducting. So if you pinch it all tight now in the straight position, when you go to left lock, you're ending up ripping it off from the brake shield. That's one of the reasons I decided to go with cable ties to the dust shield rather than a Jubilee clip. Just in the event that it does need to pull off, it will let go. It won't cause any damage or try and rip the shield off, which could contact the disc. It was now time to cut the ducting down so that it would fit both ends and use my 50mm joiner. As mentioned, because I'd unfortunately measured initially too short, I'm having to use this joiner. If you are doing it from scratch, learn from my mistakes, order at least 800mm per side in length, and you shouldn't have to use the joiner. Obviously, if you make a whoopsie, you can use a joiner to repair it. But essentially, we're coming to the end now of the install, and it's going to be on to some testing. Armed with my F1 Aerodynamics airflow kit, it was time to test the brake cooling, and pleased to report, even in this very limited simulation, it works very well. The final thing to check is that there's going to be enough room for the ducting between lock to lock, and as you can see here, I go full right lock, full left lock, and the ducting clears and moves perfectly. So it should, fingers crossed, all be fine for the first road test. Turning the steering to full right lock enables you to get full access to those caliper bolts. So we refit the front brake disc and the 2 retaining screws, and then it's on to cutting that cable tie that's held the caliper to the subframe, position it back into place and fasten the 2 18mm bolts up to 110 Newton meters. Is then on to refitting the arch line, or at least the front section of it anyway. As mentioned, it's got 3 plastic 10mm nuts and I think it's 5 to 7 8mm screws that will fasten it in place. And just take your time positioning it. You don't want to break anything forcing it in there or crack the arch line, because it can be a little bit fiddly. But once that's all tightened up, it's then just a case of moving on to the reverse of lowering the car and getting the wheels on. So as you can see here, I loosely pinch the wheels because I don't like any real load on the spacers because they're only soft alley. Once the car's back down on the ground, you can then torque the wheel bolts to 120 Newton meters each, and jobs are good 'un. So hopefully you all enjoyed the video. If so, make sure you hit that like button, consider subscribing. Until the next one, where hopefully we will actually be taking the M3 on a European road trip. But yeah, it's never a dull day with M3 ownership. I'm sure there'll be plenty more driveway tinkering to come potentially before that trip takes place in April, May time. So thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed.